Hello, everyone. So I'm joined by Trav from channel Fellow Traveler. You go by Trav or Fellow Traveler on YouTube?
Trav for short.
Okay.
Yeah, full channel name's Fellow Traveler. Make Marxist-Leninist content. I do political commentary. This channel I run for shits and giggles when I have time.
Okay. And why are we here, Trav?
Because we were going to review and provide critique and analysis of Vaush's response of my most recent hit piece on him, and basically talk about the complete and utter lack of self-awareness from his fans, as well as some other things that just come from that sphere of the internet. And honestly, I saw his whole response, and it was pretty weak. Like, in all honesty, he basically skipped 80% of the video and only focused on a few parts. But that's okay, because that makes our job easier today, right?
I listened to it passively. I agree the response was facile, and I think he actually did a few things that you point out in your critique that, well, I mean, he does those things in his reaction to your critique, so that was a little bit amusing. But at the same time, like, I do think there were, and I noted this to you as well, I think there were sort of stylistic choices and just the general, like, the tone, which sort of opened you up to that specific kind of attack. So we'll go over that as well. I do have some critiques of your video, but I think on the whole, it was actually on point. The flaws are mostly in terms of delivery.
Yeah,
but
I would agree. You chill out. Yeah. I would largely agree. In all honesty, I made that video. I was frustrated when I made it. I'm not going to lie. I saw the Jackson Hinkle debate. He thinks I made it because I'm mad because I didn't want to debate him again. No, that had nothing to do with it. That message was like a month ago. The reason why I was frustrated was because I watched the Jackson Hinkle debate and his performance was just appalling. Like, even by
that went completely by me. I have no idea what happened with that. What was the Jackson Hinkle debate?
Like, he used every dirty trick in the book. Like, he was like constantly poisoning the well and like misrepresenting the guy, trying to move on to topics. He kept trying to move the discussion, basically move the goalpost from what the topic was about to aspects of the discussion that Jackson Hinkle wasn't as right on, to try and get gotchas. Like, literally every
right. So sort of fronting his persona in lieu of actually engaging with the arguments. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. And I was appalled by it, and that's where I got, you guessed it, 70% of my examples for the most recent video, how Vaush manipulates you.
Okay. So why don't we just go through that then? Because somebody's uploaded the actual reaction. I don't know how edited this is. I don't know if you saw the live stream of it. But let's see. Let's bring this up here. There we go. So we'll go through this, I suppose, and yeah, we'll just comment on it.
Yeah,
if that suits you.
Yeah,
and,
play it at like 1 1/4 speed for brevity's sake, if that's cool. Just a little bit faster.
Yeah, sure. We'll see how intelligible that is. Yeah. All right, let's go.
This is how Vaush manipulates you. I was inspired by the recent Jackson Hinkle debate. All right. Parasocial relationship.
While the forming of parasocial relationships in and of itself isn't necessarily a form of direct psychological manipulation, it still has an important role to play with respect to the way in which the audience interprets whatever debate/discussion he may be having with whomever. Parasocial relationships are a one-way relationship in which one individual expends their time, energy, and support for another individual who is completely unaware of their existence. And on the internet, where you have all these online personas with their respective platforms, these sorts of one-way relationships organically emerge between the countless viewers can relate to. It's the same phenomenon that emerges with Hollywood actors.
I want to see
room with them. The result is that the person starts to feel like your friend or a member of your tribe.
True. I am all of your guys' friends.
So you become hyper keen to other people's bull. But whenever the leader of the tribe or the member of the pick their comments off live in front of thousands of people. If one were to donate money to Vaush,
Is it censoring the word bullshit?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think
That's a little
he's
weird.
censoring it. That's whatever.
he will in response acknowledge their existence, validating the audience member and giving their brains a hit of dopamine. Conversely, if one were to piss him off too much or challenge him on anything too aggressively, he will either punish them with emotionally abusive language at best, or
Wait, emotionally abuse. Oh wait. Oh, okay. Hold on. Let's roll it back a couple of notches. I don't think yelling at chat is emotionally abusive.
No, I don't have your video to hand. Were you didn't have in mind yelling at chat, right? Because that's like a gag.
Yeah, yeah. In all honesty, I was more or less referring to a couple of different anecdotes I saw. I can't think of a couple offhand, but there have been times where he's just basically like condescending to chat and just, well, being a dick.
Okay, so you are referring to a conversation to chat. Okay.
Yeah,
I would have.
more or less, yeah. It's really just him being a dick to people in chat who are disagreeing with him. But I mean, I didn't really think to bring up any examples of that, honestly.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that he's abusive to chat. There were definitely times in sort of the earlier part of his career, like last year, and I commented on this when, I mean, he's upfront about this, where he would deliberately try to intimidate his debate opponent, say, by actually just like shouting into the mic and just speaking over them as loudly as possible, and actually like trying to be like physically aggressive in that way, or at least to give that impression. So I mean, that would kind of make sense. I think for myself, like when I see him using chat for the purposes of abusing an interlocutor, so I don't think he really abuses chat that much because chat's anonymous and they're basically invincible. It's when he'll be debating somebody and then he will sort of turn to chat as if he's trapped in a room with a crazy person, and that's the understanding between the audience and him. And it's a way of kind of silently poisoning the well.
Yeah, it's part of his gaslighting shtick. He's basically trying to paint the opposition as just being insane. Like, look at how crazy this person is. I mean, yeah, he did it to me in my debate with him, but he's done it in plenty of other ones as well. He does it all the time. It's actually a pretty common way for him to discredit his opponent.
Yeah, so that's fair. I do think his retort here is it's kind of fair, just because again, like he's not abusive to chat specifically. I think specifying that too.
Yeah, no, I'll admit I was being a little hyperbolic when I said that, but
I'm not even sure you're being hyperbolic. I think it's just like it's just a misfire on this one point. I think the general point you're making is fair, and especially like he's upfront about the fact that like he has videos on political rhetoric where he explicitly describes what he does as verbal abuse. So I mean that's not ambiguous. I just think in this particular case, I think focusing on chat was probably a mistake, and that's what opened you up to this. We'll keep going.
Isn't that parasocial?
or outright ban them at worst. Most of the audience already agrees with most of what he has to say, and on top of that, many of them have the same emotional bond with him as one might have with a brother or a best.
Oh man, I didn't know you guys were that far gone. Really? Most of you literally think of me as your brother?
I do think it's fair to characterize the relationship as a lot of people in his audience think of him as something like a friend.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're spending hours upon hours out of your day listening to somebody talk, and like that's what you do, you get off work and you listen to live streams, and sometimes you interact, you send, hyper chats and so on, and you're interacting with this person. This person is emotionally closer to you than a stranger without reciprocating that kind of, I guess, emotional feelings back towards you. It's totally one-sided, hence parasocial.
Yeah, fair enough. But I think in that respect, though, the danger is more in terms of manipulating the affection of your audience or their growing emotional dependence on positive feedback from the channel to extort cash from them. And I mean it's not like extortion in the sense of like he's somehow putting the thumb screws on you to give him money, but rather there's a misunderstanding or misapprehension that he's perfectly willing to profit from, and that is that if you give him money and he talks to you, therefore you're in communication with him, but that's not really what's going on. like I'll send super chats occasionally because I want to make a comment on something, and that's the only way to get it heard. But I think there are people who do so because they genuinely think that they are getting warm feels back from that, and they are collaborating, and that's obviously not the case.
Yeah. A point that I've heard a million times from the detractors of that video say is that, yeah, but all streamers do this. All streamers profit off their parasocial relationships. And I mean, does that really change the fact that the phenomenon goes on? Does that make it okay? I mean, does that like negate the facts that people are going to be more inclined to agree with the person that they routinely participate in streams with, regardless of the rationale and logical and reasonable points or the arguments that the opposing side has to bring to the forefront?
No, and you're right, but then it where that would come in, however, is it would beg the question, like, why specify Vaush then? And I think like you give reasons why you specify Vaush later on, but I mean at this early stage, given the fact that again he has no reason whatsoever to be charitable, like I can understand where his response is coming from, because again it's just I think this video gets stronger the later on in it. I think it starts off a little bit too it's too aggressive, and it starts off on too non-specific a case. Or not too non-specific a case. It starts off on a case that, it's just not a strong example.
Yeah, in retrospect, I probably shouldn't have included the parasocial relations part, just because, like, it's just.
Well, I think it's. I think no, it's fine. And I don't. Sorry if I'm talking over to you. I'm hopped up on caffeine, and I just got off a brutal work shift, so I'm a little bit. But I think that part was fine. I think the primary issue with it is just that it's already known. And it's an interesting case because it's already known, and because it's already known, we're now comfortable, or a lot of people are just comfortable getting suckered in by it. Like they know that there's this parasocial relationship going. They understand like the psychological dynamic, and then that is mocked by people like Vaush. And then that now becomes a part of the joke that ropes them in the exact same way. So it's actually a little bit sinister in a mild sense, but we'll just keep going.
Friend, they're spending hours out of their day interacting with him on a regular basis. After all, he speaks confidently and eloquently on a broad number of subjects. He has the power to mute and kick his opponents at will, and he has hundreds of people donating super chats to him directly each and every day. Because of this, Vaush has the power to dictate the pace, narrative, and the platform surrounding the discussion, which means that he ultimately controls the discourse. In other words,
well, that's true. It is my channel. Yes. I mean, what would the alternative be? Like, people come on my stream and I give them like access to my OBS platform.
See, I think that's a I think he's misreading your argument here, and I think that's pretty common for him. I don't think he's
if he's going to skip over it, but in the following 30 to 45 seconds, I go on to say that a better environment, which would be much more healthy for the discourse, would be if he were to do more moderated debates, because it would even the playing field and it would provide some structure and format so that he can't just talk over people and mute them and then bounce around on a bunch of different subjects. That was basically my proposal, was just do more moderated debates, basically.
Yeah, fair enough. And you do specify muting, so I overlooked that part as well. See, when I watched your video initially, what I was immediately thinking of was the power disparity between him and his guests. So somebody like you or me who goes on to Vaush, especially somebody who's going to argue with him on something, the risk to their reputation is immediate and great, right? He has thousands of people who are who are not just sympathetic to his position, but who like him personally. And you are a nobody and a stranger with almost nobody following you. And so if he is able to convince his audience, if he he is able to do things to you at a reputational and psychological level in the context of a live interaction that you can't back. And so I think one of the advantages of a moderated debate is that it limits the capacity of one party to sort of use those tools to unfairly batter an opponent. But I mean, you're also specifying the fact that, again, like, it is his channel. He has control of the buttons, yada yada yada. And Vaush is right. Like, this is like there is no actual alternative to that. However, it does at least bear mentioning that it is a different thing for Vaush to mute you than for you to mute Vaush, right?
Yeah.
Because again, it's like he has the capacity to survive the encounter no matter how it goes. You not necessarily. If he can construe you as a fool, or if nervously you make a fool of yourself, which can happen to the best of us, then it's not over once you're done the conversation. Now you're the lol cow that everybody in his audience wants to go visit and make fun of. So it's actually pretty serious.
Yeah, and that's like 25% of the comments from the video I made. 25% of it is like, "Hi, you should stick to Joker laughs. Oh, you're the Joker tanky, whatever." You know, it just not even watching the video. They're just there to basically make fun of me and leave. Like, "Oh, you still mad because you lost the debate, whatever." You know, and I mean, it is what it is, man. Happens to the best of us. Honestly, all that happened is I laughed at him because I picked up on something very ridiculous in the moment. We don't even need to get into it, but yeah, I know what you mean. It's basically a nonstop uphill battle when you go on to debate streamers like this, because you just have an entire audience that is like slanted against you, and like you said, like you've got all it takes is one mistake or one thing that they can misconstrue as a mistake, and basically everyone's just going to shut their brains off and not listen to what you have to say.
Yeah, and I think in addition to that, I think in your case, you are both blessed and cursed with a very deep voice, and I know from experience personally that makes it very easy for people to interpret what you're saying as being angry. And it's like I was surprised when during your debate with ThoughtBat, like you were the most conciliatory, friendly person I've ever had on. So it was like, oh, that's how people view me. It's great. But we'll
so they can control the. I don't know what the alternative with that would be. You know.
Before the debate has even begun, both his audience and the layman viewing him are going to be primed to agree with whatever Vaush has to say. And on top of that, they will also be less likely to pick up on his rhetorical tactics. So much so that he could be outright admitting to it in the titles of his videos, and people will still just brush it off as him being ironic.
When you're not mad.
No matter how rationally or reasonably his opponents may argue their
You can tell me to stop whenever, by the way.
No, it's fine. Just let it roll. I'll let you know.
Points. For the aforementioned reasons, all he has to do is read a few Wikipedia articles about a subject to digest surface-level knowledge on it, so that he can project a veneer of credibility and present himself as an authority, and his audience will be none the wiser.
I think the funny thing about the Wikipedia claims is that all the people who talk about Wikipedia are people who don't even go that far. Like, they're mad that other people use Wikipedia as a source for, like, leading to other sources. They don't even do that. Like, they don't even indulge in that basic and preliminary step.
Okay, so I get where he's coming from on that one. However, I think the main issue here is there is sort of a cottage industry amongst these people of producing political content that it's not explicitly trying to do this, but it's sort of trying to target the same audience as like theory videos, but they're basically just racing through material in order to spin it's just with that I think it comes up in a few seconds. The Marx and Lenin would have voted for Biden thing, which is bizarre. It's not even as if you can say definitively that they wouldn't. It's just it's such a meaningless thing to say.
All right. So in regards to the controversy of my video, I really don't understand why people have such a hard time like comprehending the notion that Vaush like tries to manipulate the discourse, when in a debate he had with Destiny like literally a year ago, he straight up said that due to his consequentialist worldview, he thinks it's okay to like twist and bend and flex the facts and be a little shifty and manipulative if it basically means making himself look right, his opponent look bad, and therefore him win the argument in the eyes of the general audience. Like, he straight up admits to this during his debate with Destiny that he thinks that's preferable, to actually being completely transparent and honest. So, I mean, isn't that kind of bizarre? That
Well, I mean, to an extent, every person alive is like that. I think what's a little bit manipulative is that he confides this to his audience, so that you think to yourself, well, there's an inconsistency here, but it's just for the sake of pragmatism. There is a reason to this. It's never just incompetence, or it's never laziness. It's always, this was a rhetorical decision made. And one of two things is the case if he hasn't bothered to research something. Either it is irrelevant, which is very often the case, very often the impression, rather. One of my biggest issues with Vaush is that he is very effective at making people who take particular subjects very seriously look like lunatics for taking them seriously. And I think that's bad. The other one is he he treats it as something that is, or he's very good at portraying it as, how do I want to phrase this? It basically allows him to evade any responsibility for what he says, because if he's inaccurate, then it's a pragmatic decision, or the subject was meaningless and didn't matter that he was inaccurate. So I don't think he's really revealing that he's he's Palpatine pulling the strings. I think the manipulation is just in that stating of the willingness to lie, because it makes your standards drop to zero.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like completely. I was just bringing that up because I just don't understand what the controversy is when he's like openly willing. He's just willingly admitting, willy-nilly, that he doesn't mind being dishonest if it means winning. Which
that's fair. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, again,
which is
it's his own words. Yeah.
Yeah, it's his own words, and it's all kinds of fucked up. And we're going to get into this later, which is even more messed up, is really in the fact that, like what you said, he doesn't take responsibility for any of his rhetoric, as we shall see later. But yeah, go ahead and roll the clip.
Yeah, sure.
We'll get into that in a second.
Like, the people who get mad about the Wikipedia thing are people who are comically uneducated on every subject they talk about,
Since many of them are just there to have their
he skips
opinions
ahead.
validated and watch their favorite streamer destroy the opposition with
Okay, this is actually pretty long. Okay, well, hold on, wait. Poisoning the well. What is this Discord screenshot? Oh, this is from his conversation with me. Okay, this would have been from his perspective then. Right? Yeah. Okay.
So
poisoning the well.
You want to stop here? Or?
No, go ahead. He's going to skip over all of that, by the way. He goes straight to the right line part. Okay. So he doesn't even respond to majority of the video. So
horseshoe theory. There's a whole section of this dedicated to the fact that I make comparisons between tankies and Nazis, and outright lying. Well,
I mean, that's a fair thing to pin him down on. I can't remember what exactly the argument was in the horseshoe theory thing, but I mean, it's not it's not just a question of whether or not tankies, quote unquote, are like Nazis. It's whether it's who can be construed as a quote unquote tanky in the first place, and whether if that's being loaded with all the same baggage as being a Nazi, then he needs to be very careful with who he pins that label onto.
Oh yeah. I had a lot to say in the whole horseshoe theory, Godwin's law thought, but what it came down to was that it's just a way for him to terminate critical thought and keep people from basically thinking too deeply about certain things. And because he doesn't want people to flip and become ML. He doesn't want people to flip to our side. So if he feels like he needs to use what other bad faith tactics necessary to keep people from considering our arguments, then that's what he's going to do, straight up.
See, I disagree a little bit. Now, practically, it doesn't make a lot of difference because we're describing the motive for the behavior. The behavior is already there, but I don't think he is trying specifically to undermine quote unquote tankies. I think rather he already has an actual sincere aversion to I guess a certain the aesthetic of a certain subculture of left wing theorists, and we
Yeah.
sort of all we know them when they see them, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do have something to say. No, I agree with you. I do think it's genuine. I do think he genuinely despises us. And I think from his perspective, he basically sees us as the leftists who pretty much corrupt, distort, and destroy every like important socialist movement. Basically, he says he sees us as a scourge, and I know this because he straight up told me and admitted in the debate. You know, that he sees the Bolsheviks as basically all grifters. He doesn't see them as actual leftists or socialists. In his eyes, they're all just grifters. They're all, you know, just power hungry bastards that took advantage of the revolution. That is, he genuinely believes that. And he believes that of, like, you know, North Korea and China and so on. You know, he doesn't actually think the people, which, by the way, this is all provably bullshit. I'm just stating what he thinks based on what he told me, you know?
Yeah, well, we can be ambiguous about that. I think, I mean, I can sort of understand where he's coming from, just because there is, at the very least, sort of famously in the online sphere, I mean, this is the case for a lot of communities, especially ones that are sort of hold minority ideological positions. But there are a lot of toxic individuals who sort of front the the Marxist brand or whatever.
Yeah.
And like they give a bad reputation to everybody else, and it is very frustrating to deal with.
Oh yeah. No,
So, I mean,
we don't need to name any names on air, but I know what you mean. There are definitely individuals like that.
yeah, so I mean, like, it's not even that he's unjustified. I think the reason why he has so much friction with I suppose, like, serious leftists, especially ones who are like deep into political theory and whatnot, is just that, again, like, he has an unreflective reformist position that he doesn't seem to actually understand is in itself a positive position against radical structural change that is undermotivated. If he was very upfront about the fact that he was sort of ideologically committed to reformism, I don't think people would have anywhere near as much of an issue with him. I think it's more people are offended, like with socialism done left. There's like this facade of being sort of radically left wing, but when you push a little bit, and there's nothing inherently wrong with this. There are very strong arguments in favor of it. I tend to veer that way myself. When you push a little bit, it's more like liberal reformist, sort of work within the system, never challenge the parameters of the system, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's it's called radical liberalism. That's exactly what it is. I mean, these are people that'll pay lip service to like socialism and revolution, but then like when you actually poll them on the issues and in their advocacy and in their behavior, they're not really any different from like a common liberal or progressive. They just wear the aesthetics of it because it's part of their brand, you know. Otherwise, back in the day, they called people like this revisionists. They oftentimes, and he's going to do it later, by the way.
Actually, maybe you can clarify for me, because like I can understand calling somebody a revisionist with respect to like historical tradition, but what does it mean to be a revisionist in this context?
Well, a revisionist is basically somebody who, well, best way to put it is somebody who basically takes orthodox Marxist theory or Marx's word, and they basically water it down. They defang it so that they can try and make a version of Marxism that appeals to the lowest common denominator at the expense of its scientific soundness, so to speak. It's someone who basically takes Marx and turns him into a common liberal. Lenin wrote his piece on the renegade Kautsky because Kautsky is one of the known people for doing this. But I mean that's essentially what a revisionist is.
So it's the communist version of a pinko, basically.
I mean, more or less, yeah.
Okay.
I've definitely been
skipped
wrong
ahead.
at times. Let me see.
Yeah, I feel like that was a mistake skipping over that. I mean, it was long, obviously, but that seems like there'd be a lot of substance there in particular. And we're just jumping to outright lying, which I think you included after that as like there's supposed to be an element of shock here. This is supposed to be like, okay, we're taking the gloves off after we've sort of laid the groundwork, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It looks crazier than it is because there's no groundwork being laid because he's skipping ahead.
Anybody remember the whole Marx, Engels, and Lenin would have voted Biden that Vaush was pushing last year?
Still true, by the way, still completely true.
Anybody remember the poorly put together documents where he quote snipes Marx, Engels, and Lenin out of context in a pathetic attempt to extrapolate the conclusion that
Whoa, hold on. This is gaslighting and poisoning the well. How is
And
that
this
out
is
of context?
projection.
Care to elaborate?
Oh, nothing, because he's just randomly accusing me of gaslighting and poisoning the well because I'm calling him out for basically.
Oh, I see. You're talking about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of annoyed by this for a number of reasons. Primarily because it's meaningless. Like, suppose for argument's sake that you could determine that, but I don't know how you would, that Marx and Lenin would support Biden in particular in modern America, which is in contemporary America, which is a very, very different situation than, well, anywhere really, when they were alive. I don't see why it would matter. I don't think, for the most part, even hardcore Marxist-Leninists are bound specifically to what Marx and Lenin thought or would have done. That's like a theoretical base for them. It's not a religion around those figures.
Yeah, it's not, but it's also not true either, by the way. He tried to take quotes, basically different quotes from Marx, Engels, and Lenin supporting electoralism, and within the very quotes he uses, he tries to basically reach super hardcore to extrapolate the conclusion that they would have supported the Democrats, even though there are quotes that he cites within his own document that suggest the complete opposites of that. And then, when he's called to scrutiny about it by Hakeem and Bad and Panada, he backpedals basically in the rebuttals. Like, you can actually see it. He eventually backpedals in the rebuttals and basically says, oh, well, they would have supported strategic voting under specific times. So he goes from his original point was they for certain, and I even sent you the tweet. If you want, you can pull up the tweet that I sent you on Discord, where he says with like ironclad confidence that Marx and Lenin would have been Democratic partisans.
No, I think that's fairly well known.
Yeah. But then, like, he moves from that position to like, oh, well, they would have supported strategic voting in very specific times, and therefore they would have voted Democrats, basically. So he like changes his original argument. He'll like bounce around, and you'll see it here in a second. So.
I just keep coming back to how meaningless it is because it's not going to convince anybody. The average person who already agreed with the pragmatic reasoning that, well, like, look, realistically speaking, a vote for Bernie is, or a vote for, sorry, it's either going to be Trump or Biden. That's just the way it is, which is like fine. That's a judgment call. I don't see how, like, this isn't going to convince anybody who takes Marx or Lenin seriously. It was such a meaningless display. I just don't understand what the point of it was, especially given how weak it was. Like, it wasn't like it was. Even if he had actually seriously read the specific papers that he had made use of, they were very short, and everybody knows that these are deeply systematic thinkers who both wrote really hardcore philosophy and political theory and economic theory, and then wrote polemics, and often polemics solicited by like movements and whatnot, which had varying levels of quality and differed depending on their audience for pragmatic reasons. So what is the point of this?
Whatever. Here, hold on. Where are the lies?
they would have voted for the Democrats? Or how about when he claims that he didn't quote them out of context and that he did indeed read the theory, that is, the written word of these men, and proceeds to praise himself because, as it turns out, the theory agreed with him the whole time, and therefore the people constantly telling him to read theory are wrong.
By the way, I didn't even go far enough. Did you guys know that in later works from Marx and Engels, they became increasingly favorable towards the idea of non-revolutionary reform? like if you just listen to Tankies, you'd believe that they only ever talked about revolution, but in reality, the original thinkers on this were actually like, that's actually true. I don't want to go through this whole arc again because they got super pain last time, but
That's a little bit strange to me, since I believe it was late Marx that was the super revolutionary compared to his
Yeah,
earlier
no,
writings.
the late Marx was straight up a vanguardist. He doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Like, read Gotha, man. The Gotha was some of the last words written by Marx. It was published posthumously after his death, and it was a huge criticism of LaSalle and the German Communist League because they wanted to rely too much on fornicating within the organs of the capitalist state, and how like you can't just rely on working within the levers of power within the capitalist state. You actually have to form the organs of workers' control outside of it. This is like a critique that Marx made of LaSalle. So like they were still revolutionaries through and through, bro. Like pretty much until the final days. I'm sure so I don't know what he's talking about here. I'm sure he's got more quotes out of context to, back up his point.
Well, yeah, it's a little bit strange again.
Yeah, like the late Marx and late Engels were actually much closer to Lenin than they were to a Bernstein or a Kautsky by the end.
Well, a lot of his most radical writings were published posthumously because he died before they came out. So I mean, I don't know how. Like, did Marx have like a deathbed repentance in which it came out as a Democrat? I don't know what the implication is here. How did Vaush? No, I don't think Vaush is illiterate. I think he's not incentivized to spend time reading, which he doesn't like to do, which is fair. It's just that, I wish that he wouldn't pretend to know stuff that he doesn't. That's actually damaging.
But it's actually unironically true. Where'd you read this, Vaush? There are comments that Marx made on like socialist projects that were put into action towards the end of the 19th century. It's in the Critique of the Gothic program. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Paris Commune, where like Marx made it pretty explicitly clear that like just dumb adherence to the viability of revolutionary action, no matter what, doesn't produce.
Titan has a good comment here. So Vaush isn't selling revolution. He's charismatically keeping youth out of the alt-right pipeline, or that's what he thinks he's doing at least. Like, nobody is angry at Hassan in the same way, I think. I think primarily it's because Hassan is he's basically PewDiePie with a political glazing over top. And that's sort of what Vaush is ultimately. Like, it's game streaming and fun stuff for the most part. Game streams and drama, which is fine. The problem is that he does damage to serious people in the process pretty wantonly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like right now, this diatribe he's saying about like the Paris Commune and so on, and he's literally distorting Marx, like as we speak, straight up distorting it.
I don't think he's doing so intentionally. He's sort of acting like a lot of undergraduates do when they think they have a handle on a thinker because they've glanced over him a few times. Like, there are so many people who will just say invidious stuff against, like, you see this in reactionary circles a lot. They'll talk about like John Stuart Mill as being the source of all evil or something, because they read a few words that the tone didn't match their preconceptions about something. I don't particularly like John Stuart Mill either. I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah.
And I'm again, like, I don't think this is intentionally malicious on his part, but it's, he knows better, or he should know better.
Good outcomes all the time.
I actually read the literature. I did not quote them out of context. Those are Vaush's exact words. That's the claim he is making here, that he actually read the theory. But wait, no, he didn't. He didn't quote the theory from the actual literature. He quoted the theory being quoted by the articles that he read quoting the actual literature.
His second quote from Engels, too, he seems to not actually have read, but said Google for and found in, again, an International Socialist Review article. If you're going to try to back up your points from Marx, Lenin, etc., at least read what they said. Don't go
what's
quote mine. What especially
wait. It's not the review article, isn't the quote mine. I read the article, but do I have to read the whole book every time? I read the article and the surrounding content. Okay.
But Vaush, you said you actually read the theory. Why?
Did I say I read all of it?
I think the implication is that he understood it, and I don't think reading a single article quickly for the sake of quick content is sufficient to say that somebody understands something
Yeah,
very,
yeah,
very
no,
complex
no,
historically.
not at all, not at all. You actually have to crack open the books, like, and that is what he was implying when he said that he read the theory, and that none of these quotes are out of context. I actually read the theory in the literature, but no, he just quoted these. He dug up these quotes from some Socialist Review articles, and he doesn't deny it here. So,
Well, it's like let's take any other, like imagine if you were if there was like a physicist giving a talk, and you actually challenged him on stage, and your sole reading was a single sort of popular science article that seems on the surface to contradict what the speaker is saying. That would be laughed at in any number of professional circumstances. Like we're talking about science speakers, we're talking about philosophy, yada yada. Marx, Engels, even more politically active people like Lenin, they were extraordinarily well-read and systematic writers. Whatever else you may think of them, they take a lot of work to understand. They're not easy. It's what Marx regards as easy. Like there's one of the forwards to Capital Volume 1 where he says like there's no excuse for people not to be able to understand this. They just like apply themselves, stuff like that. It's kind of laughable because his stuff is really hard.
yeah,
Like these were people who were like referencing like Hegel, like one of the most notoriously unreadable philosophers in history.
oh yeah, and just for this guy to sit here and act like he knows it all just because he read a few articles in an evening, like, and this is what I was saying with the Wikipedia shit earlier in the video. I was talking about how he'll read a few Wikipedia articles to digest surface level knowledge to project that veneer of authority on the subject, when really, I mean, he's only got a surface level understanding of it, and he's going to treat the person who's literally read books on this shit, literally has read many a book on the subject. He's going to treat this person like they're stupid and they're crazy, and he's going to kick them off. Then he's going to kick them off his show. Slam dunk. I won the debate.
Now that said, as I listen to this, I immediately think of the conversation I had a couple days ago on the Shroud of Turin, where my guest would bring up stuff and he wouldn't have a source, and so I go to Wikipedia and I try to go like just see who's who, just in terms of for time efficiency. Because again, like I wasn't getting specific articles or sources that I could to verify his positions or to throw against them. So I was just saying like he'd make a claim and look, okay, did somebody address this? Can you elaborate on why this address was insufficient? Yada yada yada. And he would mock me for, you're just going onto Wikipedia to disprove this. You're not taking this seriously. So well, like that's the most efficient way to find connections between people. I wouldn't necessarily say that. The difference though is that I wouldn't read the Wikipedia article alone and then say that I've educated myself on the topic.
Yeah. Like, no. If you're gonna, Wikipedia is okay. Like, for most topics, Wikipedia is good for getting surface level knowledge on a subject, but you actually need to crack open the books and get digging if you really want to learn something. He made a completely bogus and fallacious claim at the end of our debate, and this is going to be the first thing I was going to call him out on a potential second debate. Was I was going to bring up the totally bogus claim that the Soviets were going to join the Nazis. Total fucking bullshit. Totally, objectively not true at all. And he goes on to quote like the Soviet Axis talks and use the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, like a part of the Ribbentrop Pact, as his example. Like, wow, really? I mean, I don't want to get into it here, but that's just an example of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, like you'll see people get caught in a trap sometimes where they've been outed in conversation live and like again, we've all been there. They've said something that was sort of beyond their pay grade. They didn't really know what they were talking about, and more to the point, they didn't know what they were talking about. And somebody points this out, and they'll stick to their guns and they'll try to brute force an interpretation of the facts that allows them to still be right and retain credibility. If you have a massive audience of people who have been primed to be hostile towards your nameless interlocutor and to be instinctively sympathetic to you, it's very easy to successfully do that and just make your interlocutor, who may be right, look like an idiot just by mocking him, just by pretending as if the person you're talking to is a kook. And by dint of having so many other people agreeing with you, it's like it's the power dynamic. It's you're not doing the same thing if you're doing it with that kind of scale behind you. So it does demand more responsibility that way.
Yeah. It's almost like if you have numbers behind you and you just have a personality cult following, you can get away with almost anything. Which is why, like, I've noticed, like, when all of his fans swarmed in with the video, like, all of my criticisms just fell on deaf ears. They just dismissed and ignored everything I had to say, you know? So, I don't know.
Pippa makes a good comment here, and this is really reflective of my primary issue with Vaush, because I think his platform has its place. I generally don't have an issue with him. But Pippa says Vaush might pull a few out, but he should be directing people to the next stage, something between him and Marks. I don't know about that necessarily. I'm not saying it's not that, but I just don't know. He doesn't because he can't bring himself to recommend other streamers. I think the main thing with Vaush is that, like his goal, and this is brought forth just in terms of what he does, how he comports himself. His goal is his own aggrandizement, and that's fine if he's not bringing down other people who are trying to accomplish things, whether practically or philosophically or what have you, and he does that for entertainment value.
Yeah, no, he's trying to build an audience, not a movement. And
well, I think they've kind of plateaued. I think him and Destiny both have been around the same, roughly 360,000 for months now. I think they're basically at their peak.
There's a lot of overlap between both their fan bases, though. Like, a lot of the people that watch Destiny are the same people that watch.
Oh, I think they're the same audience. I think it's a coincidence that they're both at almost the exact same number of subscribers. But they both do the same thing. I think between the two of them, Destiny's been a lot worse recently. But like, I'll say this much: like, Vaush's community is very hospitable, provided you are very well mannered in a specific way to people with extreme, or what they would regard as extreme politics. Whereas in Destiny, it's with Destiny, it's not the case at all. But we'll keep going.
I thought I read some of it. He's making the claim that I said I read all the theory. Oh, wait, I did read all the theory. Oh, that's true. I have to keep that up. I don't even know what we're on right now.
Yeah, I think, again, this misses the point. The issue isn't that whether or not he's read theory. The issue is that he's saying that he read theory as a way to establish his credibility on a topic about which he's not competent. So
you lie and said that you read something that you actually didn't. But hold on, it gets much worse. Not only did Vaush lie about reading the theory, he lies about what Marx, Engels, and Lenin actually had to say about participating in electoral politics.
Oh no.
Now, I'm not going to get too deep into this subject because Hakeem, Bad Empanada, and Socialism for All made videos covering extensively in detail exactly how and why Vaush is fractally wrong on this.
Did I have Hakeem on after the whole tanky thing? Isn't it crazy how when people actually talk to me in person, they don't have to say? Yeah, the response video was pretty dumb. This was the second Hakeem video, was the one where he was like, Vaush laughs at the drone bombing of my people, or some insane.
I encourage you guys to check out those videos.
Stop. That is straight up a lie right there. No, Hakeem did not accuse Vaush of laughing about Hakeem getting bombed. All right, no. Hakeem was saying that Vaush was joking and being ironic about it, which he was. Because Vaush, because Hakeem was complaining about how it doesn't matter whether it's the Republicans or Democrats, my country is going to get bombed either way. And the Vaush proceeds to say, well, we're going to get Biden voted in. We're going to pull the troops out of Iraq, baby, kind of ironically, just making a condescending joke out of it. So that's
right. So I can see Hakeem making a comment like this is in poor taste, and it's borderline sociopathic in the sense that you're referencing like the real potential deaths of lots of innocent people. But that seems pretty par for the course.
Independently. Instead, I am simply going to bring up a quote that he used by Engels to prove his point. We seek the abolition of classes. What is the means of achieving it? The political domination of the proletariat. Revolution is the supreme act of politics. Whoever wants it must also want the means, political action, which prepares for it.
It's the quote.
But the politics, which are some bourgeois party, the workers' party, but as an independent party with its own objective politics. Here, Engels is saying the complete opposite of what Vaush is suggesting that we go out and do. He's not saying that we vote and support a right-wing neoliberal party. He's clearly stating that the workers need to put up their own candidates independent of ruling class politics.
So I like this because it really lays out what these guys consider to be dishonesty. See how this is a subpoint of point A, where it's under the heading virtually every leftist theorist advocates for participation in bourgeois electoralism to some degree. And then the subsequent quote demonstrates exactly that.
That would be as a matter of critique, though, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, but he's using these quotes to basically reach super far and say that Lenin and Engels would have voted for the Democrats. Like, that's the whole point of all of this. So, like, what's he getting at here?
Yeah. Now, I haven't read this, so is this Engels following the collapse of the first? This is a quote by Engels, right? This is
Yes.
this heading at the top. This
Yeah.
heading at the top. This is by Engels.
Yeah, and
Right. So when Engels writes virtually every leftist theorist, that's not saying, like, that's not telling non-leftists that, hey guys, this is what we believe. He's making a statement about the decrepit state of his area, of his team, so to speak. Like, he's saying that, like, there's some deep problem within leftist theorists, because they were fighting against other socialists in their time, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, the whole what Vaush is bringing up here is totally like is the word red herring. I don't think it's a red herring, but it's a distraction from what the original point was, which was, a second ago, he's trying to reach and say that because they supported voting in elections, therefore, in a situation where we only have the Republicans and Democrats, they would have opted for the Democrats. That was the whole point. But the quote that he brings up to support his point is saying that workers put up their own candidates in elections, which means they're not supporting a right-wing neoliberal party.
They're not the tail of some bourgeois party, which the Democrat Party absolutely would be. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I think again, your biggest mistake here was to use, like, the hard language of, like, this is a lie. It boils down to incompetence and the fact that he needed content, and he wanted to make the retort that he did too much, so that he didn't bother to do the work. It wasn't worth deferring the gratification or whatever utility you got from that. I don't think it got any. I think it was a pointless stunt. But he wanted to make the statement that famous left-wing theorists would support the Democrat Party during the election. So he just, he undermotivated it, and even he just read stuff sloppily.
I honestly think you're even giving him too much credit.
That's possible.
I kind of disagree, because, like, bro, the whole point of all this, I'm telling you right now, is because he was trying to trigger and own the theory masters, really. He wanted to showcase that, the theory agreed with me the whole time. So much so that he was going to reach as far as he possibly could and take these quotes to try and prove his point. And, like, the messed up part about all of it is he is in the way that he kind of bounces around too. Like, you can't really pin him down on the subject, because he, like, constantly shifts, like he shifts his positions. It'll go from saying, they would have definitively supported the Democrats, to being like, well, actually what I meant to say is they were in favor of strategic voting and so on. Like, so I don't know.
Yeah. Sorry, just 1 sec. Yeah. So
saying, if you're taking these quotes, and I mean, either he's being dishonest or it's just wild incompetence. But either way, I mean, the effects are still the same. I think it's dishonesty, but it could just be incompetence.
It is, and you know what? You would actually have me here if the lie wasn't referring specifically to a misrepresentation of what Engels said, because I think he just read him very badly. Because again, like, he's putting the stuff that refutes him on the screen. he didn't have to do that. Like James Lindsay doesn't put the quotes that he's butchering on the screen when he does so. I think the lie is that I have taken the necessary steps to be competent to speak on this. That is the lie, because I think he knows that he did a sloppy job because he's not stupid. So you would have had me there, and I think that would have probably been a stronger line of critique. I think you would have made that anyways. But I think primarily the fact that it was a lie about the content of the text, a text that his audience is already primed not to take seriously because Marxists are nuts, as we all know. That makes it very easy to just disregard the actual point of your critique. So I think that is one area where I think you kind of, again, like you just lined yourself up for that one. I don't think he's being fair, but I think you made it easy for him.
Of course not. Of course he's not going to be fair about it. I mean, but yeah, no. I mean, I see where you're coming from, honestly.
And it's not like crucially, like it's not a flaw in your argument per se, because that's a plausible reading of it.
It's just presentation, yeah.
If you were dealing with somebody else, not even necessarily. I think the main issue again is you're dealing with somebody with this level of clout who can with minimal effort construe you in a bad light. I just think this was a tactical mistake more than anything else. Like by itself, I don't see anything inherently wrong with this, because I could interpret this as him just brazenly lying about the content of a document. That is possible. I don't know Vaush personally. I don't know if he's the kind of person who would do that. Just my impression of this is that the actual the real deception is just that, again, he has bothered to try, which I think he knows he hasn't.
Preeminent. The preceding heading does not say virtually every leftist advocates voting for the lesser evil to some degree. This does exactly what this does. This was at the beginning of the document. It was only meant to indicate the participation in bourgeois electoralism was something that pretty much everyone advocated for in some degree or another. Like, this is what I mean. Like, these are the people who are accusing me of being dishonest. They're incapable of just reading this.
The Workers' Party must be constituted not as the tail of some bourgeois, supposedly all in pursuits of demonstrating the failures of the Democrats so that we can step in with an alternative. At the same time, he was also arguing around this time that once Biden is in office, he can push him left.
Yeah.
I really don't see how what Vaush is pointing out is a slam, is a refusal, is a refutation of my original point, I guess. Because he's just saying, well, look what the header says. The header says that, they've supported voting. And look down here, Engels supported voting. Yeah, but the whole point of your original document was that you were trying to, reach with those quotes to try and suggest that they would have supported the Democrats. Like, that was the whole point of the document. So this refutes nothing.
I think also crucially, again, like he's sort of reading him like a pamphlet writer today would write. So like, we all believe in this good thing. We're good. That's sort of how you would interpret that heading today. But if you're familiar with their writing style, there's almost like it's similar to Nietzsche in a way. Like he will declare something, and the declaration itself will be castigating, because it's like all these left-wing socialists are actually just, again, playing into the game. They're supposed to be fighting to radically restructure. That's his principal critique of a lot of socialists. It's principal critique of not Engels, but that's Marx's critique of Hegel as well. It's just reifying the structures that were handed down to us by current processes or whatever. So yeah. I just think he's just radically misreading the heading. It's said in a different tone, or I think it's said in a different tone.
Yeah, I think it's just called misrepresenting my point. I think that's what he's doing. But anyway.
Well, I don't think he thinks he's misrepresenting your point. I think he misread the thing. Has a bunch of material pressures to not revise that reading because he's use that as a bludgeon against a lot of people now. I mean, it can only be embarrassing to do so. It's so much easier just to ignore it, and he probably should just ignore it at this point. But I don't think he's trying to misrepresent you here. I think he actually just misread the paper, will not revise his reading of that paper, and is just rolling with it.
Yeah, so just roll. Let's see.
We can fully
No. I was arguing that we could push the Democrats left. Bullying Biden was an optical strategy, is an optical strategy that we all want to engage in, by the way, to move Democrats over to the left by pointing out that moderate neoliberal solutions to socioeconomic problems aren't sufficient. This is what I mean. Like, this is why, like, people email me. They're like, this video criticizes you. No, they don't ever understand my points. They don't know.
Biden, as well as the Democrats, into passing progressive reform, which are helpful to the agenda of the left. Well, that turned out to be a lie as well, as Vaush has, on frequent occasions, not only defended Biden's continuation of some of Trump's most reactionary policies, such as migrants' children being jammed in cages, he has...
This video was about how it was a good thing that Biden opened the Health and Human Services facilities so that fewer children could be jammed in cages. Yeah, the screenshot shows he didn't finish it. He must have gotten mad and left 2/3.
All right, hold on. Just stop right there. All right. So during this video, he spends a solid half hour talking about nothing, basically building up to when he's finally going to say that, you know, he legitimately says that Biden's cages are better than Trump's cages. They're cages with a smiley face. In other words, he is defending the continuation of children in cages, a reactionary policy under Trump, but they're just friendly, nicer cages, I guess, under Joe Biden. And I mean, again, he's not refuting anything because this is literally what he does in the video. So I don't understand, like, what his refutation is here. Like, what is his rebuttal? What that?
I have no memory of the content of this video. I can't even say. Although, yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Like, is that the best you've got, buddy? Like you're just gonna?
I mean,
and just be like, oh, no, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. You know, it was good to keep kids in cages. I just said that Biden's smiley face cages were better, and they're more humane. Yeah.
Okay. To be fair, I can't remember this video at all, but I can see in context how if it is a choice between Trump and Biden, and there are all these bad things associated with allowing Trump to win by refusing to vote Biden, then maybe pointing out the fact that, like, it may be irrelevant, but, you know, at the very least it's not worse, kind of thing. And then there are all these other bad things ostensibly that we'll get. Well, not ostensibly necessarily. All these other bad things will be addressed more positively. You know, I mean, it even says abolish ICE there in the first place. So I don't really know how to gauge that, but I can kind of see how there's a more benign message there. But
just there's one last part. There are two things that I want to address. The one is the part where it gets to Afghanistan. Skip a tad bit further in, just a little bit further, like right there. Yeah, like right there. There we go.
Setting up new facilities. They were like, he's continuing the program. No, he was opening it so that the children could be moved out of the cages and into HHS facilities, which were significantly better than the ICE-run facilities beforehand. Like, They were actually, the complaints of the lefties were essentially arguing in favor of keeping the children packed in the cages. But he probably wouldn't even know this. This guy actually emailed me a little while ago, asking for another debate, and admitted that he was drunk the first time.
Is that true?
Yeah, no, it was true. I don't know what to say, man, but I was.
Oh, I'm not judging you. I am not sober in all of my streams either.
Yeah, no, I was anxious. That's the only reason why I did it. I was anxious. I had stage fright. I was unprepared, so I had a little bit of Cruzon. I mean, this is public knowledge. Like, I've got a bottle of Cruzon with me in the stream, like on my side of the stream from my perspective. So no controversy there. So
I mean,
Yeah.
I find for me, like I try to avoid drinking during streams, not because I tend to. I find I just get very tired. You know, like that's the only reaction I get. I don't tend to get slower. I just get really tired, which is a constant problem for me. I'm always half falling asleep.
Yeah, no, I had a little alcohol. I mean, I wasn't like plastered, but I was kind of getting there.
I would rather be a little bit tipsy in a stream than like wired on caffeine.
Yeah, but yeah, go ahead and play it. I don't have much more time.
I'll keep going.
Has also taken some positions to.
Oh, I noticed this video came out after that. I wonder if he was holding off on this.
Here,
one.
let's speed this up a little bit.
That's right. Vaush
Oh.
is now.
Okay.
Yeah, no. I wasn't holding off on anything, Vaush. Like I said, I produced this video because I saw your debate with Jackson Hinkle, and I thought it was fucking horrible. So I was inspired to make that video from that. These events were roughly 3 weeks to a month apart. This video had nothing to do with our correspondence in the email a month ago. That is all.
Advocating for policies to the right of Biden, that is, for the endless occupation of Afghanistan. Since
Again, no, guys, I supported the removal from Afghanistan. There's a video where I state my positions on this. There are multiple ones. This is what I mean. They always lie. This is why I can never take anything seriously from these people. We're in the section called outright lying, and this guy, my positions are publicly available. I'm not some small figure. You can just go on the YouTube and type Vaush Afghanistan, and you'll find my position on this.
I did actually make a genuine mistake here. I actually misspoke. I said endless occupation. I genuinely didn't mean to say that, but yeah, no, his official position is he just wants us to stay in there longer or for an indeterminate amount of time until we have a proper exit strategy to where we can.
Right.
Yeah, that's basically his official position, more or less. And I go on to do this later in the video because I was going to, but he's not going to overview it, of course. He's not going to review the next part, which is the backpedaling part. But
if he didn't, maybe for our edification, how would you modify that critique?
Oh, for this, honestly,
recognizing that you're tired as you just come off a long shift at work and it's late for you, you don't feel put on the spot. I'm just curious.
Honestly, I probably would have just left that part out. It was kind of a mistake to say that because now he's got a way just to refute the entire video. So that's my B. Honestly.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, the part where I say he backpedaled on Afghanistan, I totally still hold that, by the way, because there's no way he would have fucking come out and done the damage control that he did if he didn't get called out about it on social media, because he was basically using some pretty hardcore rhetoric like, oh, there will be killing fields, there will be mass murder, it'll be a Chinese vassal state, basically giving the implication, fear mongering, that he doesn't want it to be controlled by China, or he doesn't want the country ruled by the Taliban, so therefore it would be preferable if we stayed there for a while longer. That was the original point. So
well, we'll see now, won't we?
yeah, he's not going to get to it. He's going to go on to, whatever. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is the Joker laugh guy.
We wouldn't want to give it to China now, would we?
If we pulled out, if we allow these countries to destabilize, you know what happened within 10 years? Guaranteed, you know what happened within 10 years? I think more than anything. America pulls out with no exit strategy, no long-term plan for supporting these countries fail. And they turn into,
True.
I mean, we're talking Cambodia level. We're talking fields of forces. China will come in with boots on the ground and fix their problems.
True.
This whole.
No. Okay. So this is why I think this guy is an actual liar instead of somebody who's merely stupid. The VOD that he is watching right here is the one where I say in clear terms after reviewing this clip that I am in favor of removing from Afghanistan. If you continued this video for 60 seconds, that video would be made clear. So that means this is an outright lie. This is a knowing, unless he literally for some reason paused it here and decided not to get any more information than this clip.
Which to be fair to you, his VODs are very long. So if you were looking for his stance on that to review it, Like I can see you stopping early at that point.
Yeah, that was totally the point of that. I was stopping early to grab that clip so that I could make the point that he wants to stay in Afghanistan longer. Not indefinitely, but longer. That was the original point. So
No, at the same time,
it wasn't an outright lie. So
now at the same time, obvious tactical mistake, because we already know that he backpedals on things and he reframes things, yada yada yada, which like a lot of people do. But especially when you have this much content, it's like, suppose that wasn't there following it 60 seconds after. That is very unfortuitous, but he probably could have pulled up a similar statement elsewhere. So, I mean, I don't think it's particularly fair to pin you on this one, just because I think you honestly you probably went through quite a lot of video to get to this point, and then you just selected it. So I think it was careless in a sense, but at the same time, it's like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, it is what it is. But of course, I mean, it's not going to flip anyone.
I feel like if he was going to do this, it would have made sense to like call you on afterwards, just for a brief chat, even like for 5 minutes, just to clarify some things. I think that probably would have cleared the air.
Yeah, no, he never will. I mean, I don't think I'm ever going to be on his channel again, to be honest. Is what it is. But go ahead and let's play like
we'll wrap this up.
Yeah, it's almost over. There's one last thing I want to get to.
This is an explicit and deliberate lie.
For these countries,
No, it's not.
These countries fail, and they turn into, I mean, we're talking Cambodia level. We're talking fields of corpses. China will come in with boots on the ground and fix their problems.
You know, this whole argument he was making last year that we're going to push him left starts to sound extremely disingenuous when he's not only defending Biden's rightist policies at the moment, as well as agitating for endless military occupation.
Yeah, okay, so he doesn't actually... I don't know how I'm supposed to take any of this seriously, man. God, I hate how much attention I get when you put my names in these... look, most popular videos, debating Vaush, something that's anti-market socialism. Wonder who...
No, I do think the sham here with respect to the world push Biden left thing is that what is left for pretty much all of these people, from Vaush to Destiny to even the smaller sort of clone orbiters around them, is determined by what the lowest common denominator of their audience is, and they are assiduous about not taking any stance that is viewed as radical at the time. So they say we'll push Biden left, but really what they mean is they'll make effectively moderate liberal critiques of Biden's administration, which is fair. Yeah. Which is fair, but it's disingenuous to then bill themselves as being left-wing per se.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, that was my B. I should have left out the whole Afghanistan part. I really don't know what I was thinking when I put that.
Honestly,
that was a mistake on my part. I made a few mistakes in that video.
You know what your biggest mistake was, I think, and it's the part of the video he elided completely. That horseshoe theory part probably would have been the hardest hitting. I think that by itself would have been extremely effective, and he would have had to confront some ways in which he's basically slandering people with the label of tanky.
Yeah,
and all the baggage that comes with.
I bet you he watched that whole video off stream and like selectively picked the parts that he could go to, so that he could have an easy time just refuting it. You know, I bet you he did that.
It's possible. I tend to think he just watched it carelessly, because he let some other stuff in that actually does hit, but he doesn't acknowledge or realize that it hits. Now, granted, again, it's buried in other stuff that he very effectively construes negatively, but I think he just misread a lot of this. Again, like, this is, I think the recurring theme here is just a hurried and lazy need to produce content that puts them into a specific powerful light. And I think that like meticulously going through your video in advance would sort of belie that. Yeah,
I mean, yeah. I guess you're right. He was.
I could be wrong. I'm just speculating.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, Vaush, I doubt he's that sinister. I don't think he's that sinister, but I do think he is kind of like willfully ignorant and dishonest on things. Right here, he's trying to make the point that because I've got some videos on my channel that I use clickbaity titles to draw attention to my channel, and I mean, what you see my debate with him, you see like what a couple streams I did about him, a scripted video, bro. I've got like 140 videos on my channel. Out of that 140 videos, I've got maybe like 7 or 8 streams that are even about him. The overwhelming majority of my content has nothing to do with Vaush. So, I mean, if he's trying to make the point that all I do is just talk about him and he lives rent free in my head, then I mean that's not true. I mean,
well, I also think that's just sort of like, I mean, we know how this works, right? Like you don't engage with small streamers because there's no audience for it and it has no. It's sort of like a more vulgar form of when let's Marx and Engels when they critique philosophers or theorists, they'll target big names. Why? Because those are the names that people's opinions are attached to. It doesn't make sense to spend time criticizing a tiny lefty streamer with 500 subscribers, because even if you pin him down completely, nobody sees it.
Yeah,
critiquing Vaush is a way to get your ideas an audience.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I do it. Like, if you notice, like my most viewed videos, it's a debate between Jason and Man of the Wall. Then ContraPoints is there. You've got the infrared follow up. You've got let's see, I've got a couple responses to Pogan up there. Like, I talk about people who are big or doing well in the algorithm. Like, so Vaush is not fucking one to talk by saying that, oh, look at this guy. He's talking about people bigger than him. How pathetic. Bro, you started your channel doing nothing but talking about Ben Shapiro, Blair White, Steven Crowder, PragerU, channels with millions of subscribers and exponentially more clout than you have.
Drama with Destiny, stuff like that.
Yeah,
I mean that's it's just
Destiny. Like, this guy is not one to talk. Just saying.
Well, I just think it's just not fair when that's the game we're all playing.
And like his fans are gonna come around and talk shit about me, like name dropping his name in some of my videos. Like, bro, that don't hate me, hate the YouTube algorithm, because that's what Pet pushes into the recommended feed. That's the reason why I do it. It's to get these ideas out here, my critiques out there. And it's so annoying because they're like, when Vaush does it, it's okay. But when small YouTuber does it, it's bad thing, you know? So it's a double standard. It's a total double standard.
No, well, he deploys it effectively, so it's what it is.
That's about anti-Vaush action, response to Vaush's rabid anti-Leninist, anti-communist tract, fact-checking Vaush, re-voting debunking ContraPoints, which might as well have been a debunk of my position because I agreed with what you had to say.
Get the fuck over yourself, dude. Get over it. That video had nothing to do with you. Get over yourself.
I do like this biblical language of rebuking ContraPoints.
Yeah.
Follow-up by Vaush is still wrong. Yeah. I'm literally a clickbait name at this point. Yeah, I am. It's super, super sad. I'm like guaranteed views for these channels.
Yeah, so why wouldn't they respond to you?
Yeah, like what are we supposed to do? Just not talk about big YouTubers? I talk about Vaush not just because he's a bad takes factory, but because he is a bad takes factory with clout. So it's an easy way.
Well, there's two things going on there. One is that if you want people to be paying attention to what you have to say, and which you think is important, that's first of all how you're going to do it, and secondly, it means his bad takes have like consequences and demand addressed. Yeah.
What he says exactly. What he says has consequences. So that's the it's just a silly response. It's like it's so absurd, and the worst part about it is people are going to watch this and they're going to think that this is like an execution. They're going to think that he's nailing it, you know, when really, like, I mean,
I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think people generally recognize that Vaush is basically playing the Markiplier game with, again, like a slight leftist slant to it, which I mean is overall fine.
Yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, he's not really relevant. So that's part of the reason why I want to move away. In
this sphere, I would say he's pretty relevant in this sphere, but he's largely relevant in this sphere, sort of again as like he's a clout gravity, or it's not a clout gravity well. He's like an algorithm gravity well. You get attention by almost only by responding to him in some cases, especially if you're a political creator. And as a result of making stuff that responds to him, he gets bigger, and that becomes more and more the case. So I mean, it's like his response is, "You're just responding to me because I'm big and I have a wide audience." Like, yeah. Like,
Yeah, no,
why else would you?
Yeah, otherwise, I mean, he doesn't really say anything else. He goes on to talk about Tim Pool for a little bit, but yeah, that's pretty much over.
Well, let's wrap this up and get his final thoughts, and then we can conclude.
And this one is at the point 3,000, so it's going to be right here. It's going to be the third most watched channel. And I'm giving them attention just by looking at this. But doesn't this speak a little bit against their credibility that I can watch a section of a video that's supposed to be talking me, and in that section, which is entitled "He Lies" or whatever, they lie about my positions extensively? Like, is he embarrassed to see that? Like, does he ever, like, does he look at that and think, I'll tell you what he thinks. If he saw this, and he will see this, because they always see when I talk about them, because I'm a huge figure.
Well, hold on. I know. I'll tell you what I won't do. I'm gonna reflect on my mistakes, and I'm going to recognize when I said something that was incorrect, and I'm going to acknowledge that rather than being you and acting like I'm absolutely right about absolutely everything and that I'm infallible. I think that's a big difference between you and me. Go on.
When he sees this, he's going to think that.
Well, the catch is when your income is tied to it, right? Like if you, like now personally, I think that if Vaush, I don't think Vaush would lose respect if he was, more humble about that kind of thing. It's like, you know what, I read just a couple of papers, probably very badly, but
people don't realize like that actually helps your credibility. Like if you make mistakes sometimes, but you're open and like you actually go out of your way to acknowledge and correct them, that actually helps your credibility.
If it doesn't look like there's an interest in doing so, is the catch.
True.
Like I think what's his name, Hunter Avalon, a terribly boring person, but I think he gained a lot of goodwill by being willing to like actually acknowledge like stuff that he was doing that was irresponsible prior to his drift leftward. But
true.
I'm lying now, that I'm wormy or squirrely or weaselly, and that I've given like 67 different takes on an issue, and that I just choose the one that looks best in retrospect. In reality, no. My takes on this have been super clear. Really, really clear. They're just not willing. Either they're willing to lie or they're not willing to actually learn what those very obvious and clear takes are, I just don't know. Like, I don't know if they have any shame or whatever. I find it interesting or more cordial with Tim Pool than you are with Tankies. My level of cordiality is determined largely by the platform that I'm on and the people that I'm speaking to. But when I'm talking to Tim Pool, I'm really talking to his audience.
Exactly. That's what you're doing when you're talking to Vaush.
It's just a simple optics thing. A conversation held in the street with a random person won't be the same as like if I go on like, I don't know, the Jimmy Kimmel show or something. But keep in mind, Hakeem came on, biggest Tanky channel, and I was very polite to Hakeem. In spite of all the dishonest and bitter that he had said about me, I was kind and reasonable to Hakeem. He was, and he was on his best behavior.
You literally didn't have a choice, but okay.
No, he had a choice. I think the thing with Hakeem is Hakeem was very, very, very careful not to be too frictive in his conversation with Vaush. Because I think Hakeem, 1-to-1, is a very personable person. Like I mean, he reminded me sort of how cuck philosophy is in debate. Like he'll be excoriating, and justly so, and effectively so, in his video essay critiques of people. But when you actually see him in debate, he's just very personable and precise and careful and conciliatory. And I think that speaks to Hakeem's character. I don't think that was necessarily a Vaush thing. That being said, like, isn't it a little bit, and it's not going to be embarrassing, of course, that would be too much, but it's a little bit weird that in the same breath, or on the same few minutes at least, he will mock you for having him live rent free in your head because you're responding to him, and then say afterwards, like, give precisely the reason why you would respond to him in the first place, because you're not talking to Vaush. You're not hoping that you're going to change Vaush's mind. You're talking to his audience. Who are you saying? Who are you talking to when you make a title called "How Vaush Manipulates You"? You're not talking to people who are sympathetic to you and critical of Vaush. You're talking to his audience, who are eating stuff up that you think they shouldn't be.
Yeah. You know what's kind of funny though is I've actually had some people from his side. Some people, you know, they'll give critiques and they'll like criticize the video, but I've had a few people from his end say that, you know, a lot of what you have to say is actually pretty legitimate and you actually have some genuine stuff here. But unfortunately, because of the way you've presented this, Vaush and the majority of his fans are just going to completely ignore it.
Yeah, and I think, and I for the most part agree with that. I think your biggest mistake was you tried to do too much. I think you really needed to pin him down on the horseshoe theory bit, because I think that really is a critique that he could actually make a positive adjustment with, that he would have a hard time sort of kicking under the rug. And I think that's actually the one where you shine as you're at your most reasonable and at your least polemic. He selected the rest of it, which was very polemic because it had to do with inaccurate takes on things, sort of incompetent readings on things, inconsistencies in his position or perceived inconsistencies in his position. And you opened yourself up to making more and more errors the broader it went. And because, again, like there's infinite plausible deniability with respect to intentions or whether he misread something, I have no idea if he meant to dishonestly represent these articles. My inclination is to say that he probably didn't, but effectively it doesn't matter if indeed he did misrepresent them. I think that you needed to be more narrow and more hard hitting on a particular issue, as opposed to just trying to do like
do everything at once. Yeah.
The trial and execution of Vaush. I think it needed to be that one thing, that one particular thing that he couldn't evade. And he evaded it completely because he didn't even go over that part of the video. So
yeah, wow.
It's if indeed he didn't watch it in advance, which I think is quite likely the case, he never saw that, which is a shame, because I think there was actually something there that would have been productive for him to, you know, consider if by some miracle he actually did.
It is what it is. Honestly, I'm still debating in my head as to whether or not I should make like a follow-up where I just address some of my mistakes and like address Vaush's response. Is it even worth it?
Well, I think we've just done that here now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I think what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and go to my channel and just have a link to this. And I mean, that's pretty much going to be it.
Yeah, if you want to re-upload it, you're welcome to.
Yeah,
well.
But all in all, I think I'm officially through with Vaush, because honestly, like, I've got bigger fish to fry. I've got other stuff that I want to talk about. I feel like I've explored my issues with him sufficiently, because I've made like a grand total of like 6 or 7 videos about him in the last year and a half. So I think that's enough.
I think that whole sphere has largely, what's the term? They're all kind of frozen. Like, they've stopped growing. They're all doing the same thing. They're all just like drama baiting endlessly with each other a lot of the time. Like, it's kind of become a farce, or at least even more so than it was. Like, I don't know. I think people are largely getting bored. Like, I've gotten largely bored with Vaush. Like, he'll have some interesting engagements now and then, and I'll pay attention to those. But like, I don't really listen to what he has to say, because for the most part, I already know what he has to say, and it's not evolving. He's not getting smarter or wiser or better read. He's just kind of playing the same game endlessly. It's dull.
It's called stagnating. It's called political stagnation. This happens to a lot of people where they get set in their ways and they don't change. My politics has changed drastically in the last decade. There's been a lot of shifting and evolution. I'm like Ditto. I'm constantly changing, man. You know, I'm never stagnant, you know.
Oh God, like, you should see my early stuff. It's even my first critiques of Vaush. Like, I've changed like night and day.
Oh yeah, yeah.
in the span of a couple of years.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to say I'm finished with my coup de grace. I'm gonna start bugging Destiny for a bit. I'm gonna ride that puppy for a little while.
Oh,
I'm gonna
no.
see if I can debate Destiny, man. If I can't debate Vaush again, I'm gonna go for the next best thing and talk to that guy. I mean, do you know if he responds to email?
Destiny?
Yeah.
I've never tried to reach out to Destiny.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm gonna-
at least Vaush is a friendly personality. I'd rather shoot myself than talk to Destiny for an hour.
Yeah, no, I honestly I have a lot more respect for Destiny than I do of Vaush. I mean, at least Destiny doesn't try to pretend to be radical. He's just openly like straight up a lib, you know.
He does try to pretend to be knowledgeable, and I think that's kind of worse sometimes. But
Yeah, no, I mean he's extremely condescending, and I watched his debate with Wolf recently, and there's a book I read. I've just finished this, Farm to Factory. I went through the entirety of it because I was doing it in prep with the debate with Ubersoy, but I just finished it today. And the funny thing is like in that book, if you go through it, the reality reflects the complete and total opposite of like everything Destiny has to say about socialism in practice. Like he literally just throws out anti-communist tropes, and none of it's true when you actually look at the data. But
I think Pippa here has some good advice for you. Don't go too hard. Vids about what you like, not just what you hate. I think honestly, like you're growing. Like you can address things that these larger platforms misrepresent and whatnot, but I wouldn't fixate on just that, because I've been paying attention to how these orbiters, because I've been thinking about how to grow my own channel. Like these Vaush orbiters and these Destiny orbiters, they aren't growing very fast. You can spend all of your time doing that kind of drama, and maybe you can make like a modest income on Twitch doing that, but it's not radical growth. They're pretty weak, all things considered.
yeah, yeah,
so-
no, like I said, I do content about bigger channels because it draws attention. The only reason I've even made as many videos about Bosch as I have is just because he says a lot of bullshit. He's a big channel, and it's easy. It's just an easy way to get eyes on what I have to say, you know. But like I said, I'm officially through with that. I'm still gonna make content about other YouTubers, but I like this comment, you know, do what you like, not do about what you like, not about what you hate. I think I'm gonna follow that advice. I'm gonna make more stuff about what I love, you know. I think I've got some good stuff lined up for that.
All right. Well, speaking of that, you probably love to sleep about now, so let's call it.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for well, thank you first of all for.
Oh well, no, thank you for having me on.
No, you're very welcome anytime. Yeah, it was an interesting conversation. I enjoyed it, and thanks everybody for watching. And take care. Have a good night.
Yep. Kill the stream. Killing it.